It's Zimbabwe's first ever election without Bob on the ballot. But Robert Mugabe, the 94-year-old ex-despot who'd rigged elections to keep the opposition out of power, tossed a grenade into the political arena, endorsing the opposition leader before casting his own vote, with a little advice from Gucci Grace, 40 years his junior.
He abused us for 37 years, but we like him because he's voting our president, Chamisa.
Mugabe left to cheers and boos. For some, he remains the independence hero. For most now, though, he's a residual anachronism. Supporters of Nelson Chamisa, leader of the Movement for Democratic Change, were up and out long before sunrise to make sure they got their chance to vote.
We just want change. That's the reason why we came to vote early in the morning, because we are sick and tired of this current government. We want change in Zimbabwe.
After nearly 4 decades of tyranny and ultimately destitution, today held the promise of the dawn of a new era, a reawakening, and for young urban Zimbabweans, rejuvenation, a changing of the guard. 23 presidential candidates, but only 2 that matter. Chamisa and the incumbent, Emmerson Mnangagwa, the crocodile, 75, stealthy and cold-blooded, Mugabe's reptilian former henchman.
I'm happy that both the process for campaigning was peaceful. The voting today is peaceful.
Not entirely true. An assassin tried to kill him at a campaign rally just 5 weeks ago. Such is the strength of feeling here. Then Nelson Chamisa, lawyer, firebrand pastor, now 40, an opposition activist since his student days.
We have no doubt that if the ballot is an appropriate one, a genuine one, and not a bastardized or a fake one, victory is certain for the people.
Victory for Chamisa, in other words. He must have been knocked sideways when his party's erstwhile tormentor, propped up by tiger cushions, said he couldn't vote for those who'd tormented him, by which he meant Mnangagwa, who'd betrayed and ousted him.
I was asked the question. I told you, no, I can't vote for Zanu-PF. They ousted me. So what's wrong with that?
Under Mugabe, his ruling Zanu-PF stole elections by intimidation and by beating people. His thugs indulged in routine torture. Leopards cannot change their spots, it said. And as to crocodiles, best not smile at them. Tonight, before polls closed, Chamisa's MDC was crying foul, with allegations of voter intimidation and corruption.
It was a strategy to intimidate the voters, a strategy to make sure that voters would vote for Zanu-PF.
In some cases it works very smoothly, but in others we see that it's totally disorganized and that people become angry, that people leave.
The days ahead will determine whether Zimbabweans, whose median age is just 19, can escape Mugabe's long, dark shadow, because Mnangagwa, for all his smiles, was chief enforcer of the ancien regime.
Jonathan Miller reporting. We're now joining us from Harare is MDC candidate Linda Masarira, and with me in the studio is Associate Fellow of the Africa Programme at Chatham House, Dr. Knox Chitiyo. What amazing scenes, Linda Masarira. There seems to have been a fantastic turnout. What about people who may not yet have voted? I mean, are they going to keep the polls open or are they definitely shutting?
From the reports that I've gotten, from most of the polling stations. Most of the polling stations have already closed. And it is also rather unfortunate that there are a lot of people who were turned away whose names were not also appearing on the voters' roll. So in most centers in Harare Central, where my chief election agent has been giving me feedback on a 10-minute basis, they have already closed and they have already started counting. I'm still waiting for reports from other centers around Zimbabwe on whether they've already closed and if they have already started counting the ballot papers in the different areas.
Do you have any sense at all as to what the size of turnout was? It's too early to say, presumably.
There was a very good turnout. I actually wasn't expecting that because of all the irregularities ZEC was exuding to. I actually thought there was going to be voter apathy, but I'm really proud to be a Zimbabwean today because Zimbabweans now know how important it is to cast their vote, to choose a leader that they want. And for me, I think this is now the start of the journey to freedom and to democracy, where Zimbabweans now understand how critically important it is to cast their vote.
Well, Linda, just for a moment, we can see now the ballots being counted. So we're just going to have a look at that right now. Yes, there are still, as you say, the polls have closed in virtually every area, and there is counting going on as we speak. But was it free of violence as far as you know?
Like I've always said, elections is not a one-day event. Elections start when voter registration started. The pre-election period had a lot of irregularities, which actually flawed the electoral cycle. It was today there were very few incidences of violence that were recorded. For example, I'll speak for Harare Central constituency where I'm running. We had Zanu-PF supporters who came clad in their T-shirts and who tried to put up posters in St. Martin's. We had Zanu-PF supporters who also came clad in their T-shirts at Kwembom Boys High. But physical violence, I haven't had any report so far of physical violence that occurred today.
Well, that's good news. Stay with us for a moment because I'm going to talk to Dr. Chitiyo. Dr. Chitiyo, I mean, is there a real chance of the MDC winning, or is Mnangagwa, frankly, going to walk it?
I don't think he's going to walk it. It's probably too close to call now. If this election had been 2 or 3 months ago, Zanu-PF was in a stronger position, but certainly now the opposition really have come up. So at this stage, I think it's really too close to call, but certainly there is a real challenge now from the opposition.
That real challenge, I mean, he's 40 years old. Is he really up to it?
Well, you know, he does appeal to the young people who are looking for a younger leader. And, you know, bear in mind, there are other also younger candidates. It's not just Chamis, there are independent candidates as well. So there is, even if Mnangagwa wins, he still has to incorporate a generational shift. So whoever wins, there's a generational change, which I think Linda has also alluded to, which is happening now in Zimbabwe, regardless of who wins.
Is there the slightest chance, perhaps, of them all getting together and having a government of national unity?
Wouldn't rule it out. If it's a very close poll or if we end up with a possible runoff. People remember 2008, which is a very violent process. So there may be talks behind the scenes of a possible coalition government. We don't know. But, you know, in Zimbabwean politics, anything can happen. So I wouldn't rule out a possible coalition of various players.
Now, what about Bob and Grace, Mugabe's? I mean, they're spent. There's no way that they're in any way going to be able to come back. But influence?
Well, there was a big symbolism when Mugabe urged voters to vote against Zanu-PF. I mean, there was a symbolism there. Whether it changed people's minds is another matter. I think people have already decided who they were going to vote for. But there was certainly a symbolism in him saying, vote for the opposition.
And, I mean, will they face trial, whoever wins? No.
I don't think so. I think people want to move into a real post-Mugabe era, regardless of who wins. We're in a post-Mugabe period now.
I'm just going to go back to Harare for one last thought from you, Linda. Do you think that this could be a free and fair election, or is that too much to hope for?
It's too much to hope for, considering all the irregularities that we went through during the voter registration process. The proclamation date of the election date was done without the voters' roll in place. We had a very shambolic voters' roll. We had a lot of people who were turned away from voting, whereas they had registered to vote and their names were not appearing on the voters' roll. We also had a lot of challenges even during the nomination court process and everything else. So for us as the MDCT, we don't view this election as a free and fair and credible election, because there was also media bias in regards to publication of electoral candidates.